Have you ever found yourself sitting across from a friend, sibling, or colleague and, despite all outward appearances of warmth and support, felt an inexplicable tension humming beneath the surface? Why is it that sometimes, even in the presence of people who claim to stand with us, we sense a subtle ache, a whisper of suspicion, or the faint sting of emotional discomfort? It's a peculiar, haunting thing. You rack your brain for hard evidence, but there are no obvious betrayals or biting words, only a vague intuition hovering at the edge of consciousness. Their smile might be soft, their praise effusive, yet something behind their eyes feels out of tune, as if a minor key shadows the melody of friendship. Let's not rush past this experience. Let's pause and give it its due. Most of us have been there, replaying a conversation while washing dishes, asking ourselves why a compliment felt like a veiled critique, or why an embrace left us feeling slightly colder than before it began. We learn to tell ourselves stories. Maybe it's my imagination. Maybe I'm just oversensitive. And yet, the discomfort lingers like a splinter you can't see but can definitely feel. Have you ever noticed a friend's eyes flicker when you shared a success? Or felt a quiet withdrawal, almost imperceptible when you needed support the most? It is in these spaces, where words fail and intuition surges, that the hidden side of human nature makes itself known. Carl Jung named it the shadow, the dark, repressed aspect of the self that all humans carry. On the surface, civility reigns. We are socialized to be agreeable, to praise and support. But the shadow dwells in all of us, shaping our feelings and behaviors in ways we often deny, even to ourselves. This hidden part can take thousands of forms: quiet envy, resentment, a wish to outshine or undermine someone else. The shadow loves the mask, Jung writes, and aren't we all masters of masking? Who hasn't delivered a compliment that was laced with a touch of bitterness, or accepted one that felt oddly suffocating? We pass through life in a choreography of smiles and reassurances, while beneath the surface, invisible forces tug at the threads of our relationships. The cost of ignoring this intuitive discomfort is profound but rarely calculated. What happens within us when we swallow our instincts for the sake of harmony? Our mental well-being slowly erodes as we make excuses for others' behaviors, or for our unease itself. We can grow anxious, second-guessing our perceptions, losing trust in our own emotional compass. Over time, ignoring these murmurings can lead to a kind of subtle self-betrayal. We find ourselves becoming anxious in the presence of certain people, dreading encounters that should bring joy and openness. It's an emotional tax paid daily with interest. At the heart of this is a simple truth. Resentment, competition, or hate, when hidden behind the mask of affection, becomes a slow-acting poison. It is not the dramatic acts of betrayal that wound us most deeply, but rather this slow leak of goodwill, this disguised animosity that seeps into our self-esteem and trust. Relationships that exist under such a shadow can feel like a garden where, beneath the flowers, roots are being eaten away by unseen blight. So, what can we do? How can we defend ourselves, not just from the ill intent of others, but from our own compulsion to ignore or rationalize the signals of discomfort? The journey ahead is not about sowing suspicion or shrouding our hearts in cynicism. Rather, it is about learning to read the subtle script of human emotions, to recognize the early warnings before hidden animosity has a chance to do its work. There are, as we shall see, unmistakable signs, small patterns, odd silences, gestures that don't quite fit the narrative of support. It is astonishingly universal. This experience of suspecting, somewhere inside, that someone close may not truly wish us well. It binds us together in our vulnerability. And if you have ever felt alone in your discomfort, let me assure you, you are not. In all cultures and walks of life, people tell stories of the friend who smiled too easily, the mentor whose approval stung, or the sibling whose rivalry was never put into words. The shadow is not just other people's, it is ours as well, and learning to confront it is a vital step toward authentic connection and psychological self-defense. So, for the next few moments, let's embark on a journey together, a journey to unmask the 8 warning signs of hidden animosity. This is not only about protecting yourself from others' shadows, but about seeing your own with clarity and compassion. Will you dare look beneath the surface and listen more deeply to what your intuition is saying? Because in learning to recognize these markers, we not only guard our own well-being, but build the foundation for more truthful, resilient relationships with others and ourselves. Let's begin. Let us peer a little closer into the everyday theater where true intentions are not always as they seem, where the actors in our lives perform with gestures so practiced and lines so expertly delivered that we barely notice the undercurrents swirling just beneath the surface. Surely you have encountered the friend whose wit has an edge so finely honed it almost draws blood. A quip about your failings disguised as playful banter, laughter erupting from others while you smile thinly to hide the sting. Perhaps you've left such exchanges wondering, did I take that too seriously? Do I lack a sense of humor? Yet, that seed of doubt, quietly sprouting in the silent corridors of your mind, is itself a warning, an invitation to pause, to reflect, to ask, is this friendship nourishing or is it draining? Sarcasm, when it is wielded with the intent to tease in good nature, should provoke laughter that lights up the eyes, shared warmth, a connection, a twinkle of mutual understanding. But what of the friend whose every barb lands a bit too close to your vulnerabilities, who notices your insecurities and seems to delight in spotlighting them for an audience? Picture them folding their arms and delivering a perfectly timed remark when you falter. Well, you always were the flaky one in the group, and the quiet freeze that spreads over the conversation. In these moments, humor ceases to serve as a bridge and instead becomes a weapon, subtle and deniable, a cloak for deeper motives. This is not just about jokes, of course. It is about patterns. The so-called friend who always forgets your big days, who misplaces your birthday but remembers every detail of your missteps. The advisor whose well-meaning guidance somehow leads you astray. Are you familiar with the gentle friend who counsels you to take it easy, right when you are on the verge of a breakthrough? Or the companion who, during moments of crisis, seems to subtly undermine your resolve with phrases like, "I'm just worried you're not cut out for this." Their concern seems genuine, but the aftertaste is sour. Your self-belief, once steady, now flickers with uncertainty. Why do some seem to carry this hidden intent, this pattern of undermining under the guise of concern? To answer this, we must wander into the depths of the human psyche, into the shadowlands articulated by Carl Jung. Jung suggested that each of us carries a shadow, a repository for the traits we deny in ourselves, our weaknesses, envies, shames, and disappointments. When someone close to us is unable or unwilling to confront their own insecurities, these unmet feelings are often projected outward, cleverly disguised as criticism, sarcasm, or sabotage. Envy, especially among friends, is a hiss that rarely sounds above a whisper. It weaves itself into advice intended to limit, into cynicism passed as worldly caution, and even into carefully masked gestures of assistance that slowly erode your autonomy. There's a peculiar brilliance to emotional manipulation, a choreography of guilt, obligation, and confusion. The manipulator thrives not by outright aggression, but by blurring lines of affection and attack until you begin to question your own perceptions. I only say these things because I care about you. No one else would be honest enough to tell you. These incantations are meant to confuse the witness, to make you doubt your reality, to keep you enmeshed in seeking approval you are unlikely to receive. But how can you discern when care crosses over into subtle sabotage? The first and simplest signal is how you feel. After time spent with someone, do you feel lighter, more alive, more secure in who you are? Or do you leave their presence diminished, scrambled, shrunken? Some speak of intuition as a kind of primitive radar, but it is in fact a finely tuned instrument, an echo of your own unconscious, a heart that knows long before the mind can rationalize. If you find yourself repeatedly making excuses for someone's hurtful words or actions, if you downplay their impact with, "They're just joking," or "They really do care," pause. Ask yourself, am I being supported or subtly undermined? Practical advice in these scenarios often runs counter to our deepest social training, which urges us to avoid confrontation, to be magnanimous, to absorb slights as demonstrations of maturity. But true maturity is not self-erasure. To draw boundaries is not to be paranoid or hypersensitive. It is to honor the dignity of your own experience. You might simply state, "That joke felt hurtful. I know it was meant in fun, but it affected me." Or, when advice rings hollow, thank them and trust yourself enough to choose your own path. Notice who respects these boundaries and who responds with defensiveness or further manipulation. Over time, the most important project is not to change others, but to fortify the trust you extend to yourself. The world is not short of advisors eager to take a seat at your table, but far fewer are those who genuinely celebrate your growth, your risk-taking, your happiness. Boundaries are not walls to isolate, but filters to ensure the nourishment of your spirit, to invite only those who reciprocate your earnestness, your honesty, your joy. Above all, remember, your intuition, your emotional responses, the subtle shifts in the energy you feel around others, these are not liabilities, but gifts. The most dangerous poison is that which tastes sweetest, and the cruelest manipulation often comes wrapped in concern. Trust yourself. Notice what you notice. In doing so, you become both your own guardian and your own awakener, refusing to stay asleep in the presence of dangers disguised as friends. Let's walk a little deeper into the thicket of human connection, where the branches are tangled and not every leaf is what it seems. By now, we have circled the obvious contours of false friendship and veiled intentions, peering at the surface smiles and rehearsed pleasantries. But the real complexity unfolds in the subtler gestures, the gentle touches that seem warm, the praise that sounds sincere, yet leave you with an inexplicable unease. Have you ever stood at the center of your own celebration? A graduation, a promotion, something that feels monumental, and yet noticed the glimmer in someone's eyes that shifts from pride to calculation? A casual remark, almost indistinguishable from genuine happiness, suddenly lands with sharp precision. "Well, you always had it easier anyway," or "Let's see what you do next." Can a friend truly celebrate you if, inside, they are sizing themselves up along your shadow? This silent rivalry snakes quietly through many relationships. It is not always open hostility, but the slow, invisible drift where successes are measured, not shared, where every joyful moment becomes a score in an invisible game. How many of us have hosted friends whose congratulations sound more like obligations, or have ourselves felt stung into deflection rather than true, unguarded joy for someone else? What is it about the triumph of another that sometimes awakens the prowling animal in our ego, alert to every potential slight? Jung called this phenomenon ego dissociation. It is as if part of ourselves has slipped backstage, replaced by an actor mouthing lines that someone else wrote. We might notice the hollowness in someone's encouragement, a glance that doesn't quite land, a pat on the back that veers for a split second too quickly into distance. This is the auto-reply kindness we've come to tolerate, the congratulatory emoji, the bland "good job" text sent as if swatting away a notification. Each interaction seems complete from one angle, but brings no warmth, like thanking a robot for opening a door. Sometimes this emptiness is not even competitive, but stems from another variety of masquerade: control disguised as care. Picture the friend, let's call him Ari, who calls, ostensibly to check in on your new job. But the questions come dressed in worry. Are you sure you can handle all that stress? Should you talk to your boss about taking less on? On the surface, it's concern, yet under the repeated insistence is a subtle pulsing, a desire to mold your decisions, offer you protection that you didn't request. Maybe you have met, or been, the friend who, unable to achieve their own goals, manages their anxiety by nudging you into caution, reining in your risks, all under the gentle guise of support. What is really at work here? Is it love, or the psychic discomfort of seeing someone else step bravely into the world while you yourself are paralyzed at the edge? I want to pause here and ask, are these always intentional acts? Is competing with a friend or discouraging them under the cover of care always the product of a scheming mind? More often than not, this kind of behavior is shaped by shadow. Jung, again, would nod knowingly. We carry pockets of insecurity we cannot admit, so they find their voice in the way we minimize or one-up the stories of others, quietly siphoning off their joy because we cannot find our own. Sometimes, too, we have been steeped in cultures, familial, societal, digital, that reward us for being poised rather than present, for having a spotless surface while the mess churns underneath. When a colleague's promotion is met with barely masked resentment in the break room, ask yourself, whose measure are we all afraid of failing? Whose scripts are we performing, and at what cost to our own spirit? Gossip often serves as a release valve for these unspoken rivalries, a method of redrawing the emotional map so that no one's ascent leaves us stranded below. But have you noticed the energy in a room when your good news is met with half-hearted applause, furtive glances, the awkward clearing of throats? Or the way body language can betray what lips try to conceal? The folded arms, the barely there smile pinched tight, the eyes that dart away in what looks like embarrassment, but is, in truth, the pain of comparison? These are the subtle signals we detect without fully understanding, the ripples that our intuition picks up before the mind can translate. Yet, before we rush to judgment, let's examine our own hearts. How many times have we found ourselves, however briefly, wishing we were the one being celebrated? Whispered a story of our own to reclaim the spotlight, or quietly rejoiced when the friend who outshone us stumbled? The shadows are not just out there, they curl within us too, waiting for the light of truth and attention. The real work of self-reflection asks us not just to spot these patterns in others, but to interrogate our own motives, to see where our congratulations are padded with resentment, our advice tinged with the need to be needed, our kindness more habit than heart. Talking about this is uncomfortable, but perhaps that discomfort is a clue, a map even, leading us back to the question: do we want authentic connection or comfort at the cost of realness? If our relationships are wrestling grounds dressed as dinner tables, can we find a way to put down the script drop the performance, and meet one another with honesty instead of maneuvering? Exploring these darker corridors of intimacy is not about unmasking others, but about finding the courage to meet our own shadows, and by doing so, allow our friendships to become places of genuine celebration, open-hearted support, and, finally, the quiet, enduring freedom to be ourselves. Before you close this book or walk away to meet the next moment in your life, let's pause together and look back on the ground we've covered. You began with questions every soul asks, even if only in whispers behind closed doors. How do I know who truly supports me? How can I trust the murmurs of my heart when someone's actions and words don't quite align? In this conversation, we peeled back the polite veneers, wandering into the more complicated but honest terrains of human nature, where friendship, envy, kindness, and quiet rivalry tangle together in shadowed corners of our lives. Maybe, as you listened, the stories took you back to memory's edge, a time when a friend's smile seemed painted on, or when you could feel, almost physically, the chill of silent competition in the room. Perhaps you remembered that moment someone helped you, yet left you feeling smaller, or nodded approvingly at your ambition, but never truly joined in your joy. These are not merely anecdotes to disregard, not superstitions or passing feelings. They are your intuition, your fierce and ancient ally, whispering that something is amiss. Think about those signs we unraveled. Emotional manipulation that leaves you second-guessing your own perceptions, sabotage cleverly disguised as advice, compliments edged with rivalry, kindness that feels like a leash rather than a gift, the sly art of gossip, the stone-faced silence in your hour of triumph, and the silent symphony of body language that echoes what words dress up and hide. Did you recognize any of these in your life? Did you wince, nod, or feel your own heart echo with understanding as the puzzle pieces fit together? The ultimate invitation this conversation offers isn't to drown in suspicion, nor to build walls so high you cannot see the outstretched hands of honest companionship. Instead, it is a reckoning with the reality that not everyone who stands in your circle stands in your corner. Intuition, that primal compass, is not there to make you paranoid, but to keep you safe. Your perceptions, long silenced by the demands of politeness and the fear of offending, are in fact ancient tools for survival. What if, instead of dismissing them, you entrusted yourself to their guidance? How much spiritual exhaustion might you have spared yourself by listening to the small voice that noticed the averted eyes, the forced laugh, the congratulatory words delivered with a sigh? There's a painful liberation in this, because the cost of ignoring your inner warnings isn't merely hurt feelings, it's the slow erosion of your own spirit. Poor boundaries, forged in the hopes of being loved or accepted, turn you into your own jailer. This is the tax you pay for peace treaties signed with those who quietly resent your happiness or success. But you do not owe it to anyone to keep paying this debt. Listen, the most radical act of self-love is not fighting to unmask the envy or duplicity of others. It is choosing instead to nurture your own peace. There is a quiet dignity in letting go, unannounced, from those who compete with you instead of joining you, who gossip rather than champion, who watch as you succeed not with pride, but with calculation. There's more freedom in stepping away than in seeking to perform, prove, or win their approval. Aren't there enough battles to fight in this life without making loyalty tests out of those who have already declared themselves in the subtlest of ways? Distinguish, then, between the crowd and the confidants, between the ones you're friendly with and those who are true friends, whose delight in your happiness is as pure and uncontrolled as your own for theirs. Not everyone deserves your unguarded spirit. You get to choose your investors, your cheerleaders, your companions in joy and adversity. Is that not a joyful responsibility to curate your emotional landscape as carefully as you tend your home? As you move forward, understand this is the beginning, not the end. Self-mastery and authentic living are continual journeys requiring ever sharper awareness and honesty with others and, most crucially, with yourself. Do you dare to see the shadows, not just in the people around you, but in your own heart? For don't we all, at times, crouch in envy's corner or shroud our intentions in politeness? Recognizing the shade in others loses its value if we're unwilling to meet our own. Yet it is this recognition that humbles and deepens us, renders us not paranoid or bitter, but wise, empathetic, and discerning. What have you learned truly about the human creature, capable of both breathtaking loyalty and quiet betrayal? Where does this leave you in the matter of trust, of vulnerability, of growth? Perhaps the courage to look clearly at the shadows, to honor the intelligence of your intuition, and to say yes to your own peace is the first step toward a more conscious and loving existence. So carry these insights with you, not as armor, but as a lantern lighting the way into every relationship and every self-encounter. Trust yourself, deeply, instinctively, with the respect your spirit has long deserved. And may that trust become the cornerstone, not just of protecting your peace, but of creating it over and over as you walk your path, aware and awake.